Hello, hello, guys. Welcome to Happy Hour. I have a feeling, a sneaking suspicion, that today's happy hour is going to be a couple things. Number one, I think we might be a little light on attendance just because it's Labor Day weekend. If you guys took a 4-day weekend, I understand it. If you're already driving to the beach or on your way to a nice long weekend, I totally get it. No harm, no foul. You can always watch later. But even though I think our numbers might be few today, I think that we are in for quite a little show because by special vote, because I had a couple different options for things we could watch today, and you guys selected, let me show you this one right here. Learning as rebellion, resisting right-wing attacks on higher education across the Americas. Now, the reason that we are watching this is because I'm gonna zoom backwards to like a week and a half ago when we watched a webinar on Haymarket Books YouTube channel. And this webinar was with three like anti-racist trainers, and one of them is currently training the Cambridge schools, and that's how we came across it in the first place. But I got to looking at the videos on Haymarket Books timeline, and there are some doozies. This is a legitimate socialist publisher. They only publish books that are like true socialism. And so I put three options out there today. I put this resisting right-wing attacks on higher education out. I really do want to watch what is the relevance of the Russian Revolution today at some point. They had this one, keywords for capitalism, and I put those three out for a vote, and resisting right-wing attacks on higher ed won. So that's the one we're going to watch today. But look what I just noticed. Check this out. Literally 2 seconds before I went live on the channel. Look what Haymarket Books is doing starting tomorrow. They are legitimately doing a socialism conference on their YouTube channel starting tomorrow. Look at this. At 2 p.m., maybe I will do a live reaction to their entire day of conference. They are doing a session on transgender Marxism at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Who wants me to stream that session? I think we need to. I think we might be obligated to do a live reaction to that particular session. They've got Black feminism and Black liberation. They've got racial capitalism and the case for abolition. They've got rebuilding a new reproductive justice movement taking on the right. They got, I mean, like this is like the real stuff, guys. These are the goods right here. And so just a heads up that I might be doing, a couple streams or two. I don't know if I'm going to do them on Actively Unwoke or on my main channel, but I definitely want to watch that transgender Marxism one. And as Judy in the chat knows, tomorrow is a very exciting day in the knitting world. Tomorrow is the day. Knitters won't care about this, but I care about this. I basically have to get up early tomorrow because kits for the West Knits Mystery Yarn Along go on sale at 10 a.m. my time tomorrow, which means I'm gonna be up. I'm gonna be wide awake because like when kit, you guys gotta understand in the knitting world, the annual West Knits Mystery Yarn Along is like a religion. It's like a holiday, and he puts together all these kits, and you got to get in there quick. You got to get in there when those kits go on sale, otherwise you're not going to get the kit you want because they sell out like that. So I'm going to be up tomorrow anyway because I got to get my kit. I might get as many as 2. I have a couple different ideas. The whole mystery yarn along thing is you don't actually know what you're knitting. You get a new clue every week, and so you get some parameters. Anyway, yeah, Judy's got 2 now. I think Judy and I knitted the shawl twice last year. I think you knitted it twice too, Judy. So I'm going to be awake anyway. Why not stream some socialism all day on a Saturday? I'm just saying. So that is what we're watching today, guys. We are watching resisting right-wing attacks on higher education across the Americas. I'm sure this will go great with the Biden speech that we all watched last night. That was nuts. So that's what we got on deck today. And of course, nice pumpkin beers and my show you in a second. But that happy hour is something that we do on Fridays on my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke. I'm also streaming on Odyssey. I'm streaming on Rockfin. I'm streaming on Rumble. And based on the response I got to the stream on Rumble last night, I might continue streaming on Rumble. Please let me know on Rumble if you'd appreciate that. I'm also actually streaming on Gitter right now, because I've started doing that again. But of course, I do prefer people to watch on YouTube, and that is simply a matter of function, because YouTube integrates their chat into the streaming software I use, and the other platforms do not. I really do hope the other platforms will do that at some point, but they're not right now. So before we get into it, guys, I just want to remind you of a couple of things. Number one, of course, I am still doing the fundraiser for the Schools Exposed program. I've actually been playing around for quite a bit of the day-to-day on a website for Schools Exposed. I actually got schoolsexposed.com, that domain. I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm working on building out a website for this program right now. I also did procure like one potential for an online course room. I have a couple potentials for an online course room. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with, but I did actually get one today that I think is pretty cool that I'll be updating people about. And I'm going to give people a choice. It doesn't really matter to me which one we go with, but I'm going to give people a choice when it gets closer to that. But this is my training program to train 10,000 parents how to find out what the public schools are teaching their kids simply by using publicly available information. I am fully funded. I did meet the funding goal, so the program will get funded. But of course, any additional donations that I get are going to go to other parts of the program. It's all going to be reinvested. I'm not taking a vacation or anything. So the more the merrier. I would really like to have a marketing budget for this program, if I'm honest. Getting in front of 10,000 parents, I think that's going to require like putting ads in like parent circulars and things like that. Doing some like I want to do like grassroots like flyers and like door hangs and stuff like old school, because I think that the old school marketing tactics are actually better ways to get in front of people now. So I would love a marketing budget to be able to dedicate money to that. That would be pretty great. And so you can contribute to that and get yourself a spot in the first group to get access to the program, and even get scholarships for other people. Lots of options available. So just because we hit our funding goal doesn't mean where we stopped fundraising. I would still like to get this number up as high as we can to be able to have as many resources as possible. But of course, thank you so much to all of the people who donated already. I know there were people that were waiting until after the first of the month to get paid and all that, and I totally appreciate it. But thank you to everyone who supported it already. And if you've already supported it or aren't in a position to financially support it at this time, I totally understand. Please make sure you share it. Word of mouth is going to be the way we get this done. So I need everyone's help. I need everyone on deck. School's coming back into session. We got to come out of summer mode and go back into action. And I need all hands on deck to get this in front of as many parents as possible. And I really, really appreciate it. If you're not up for that, there are other ways to support my work. You can find them at activelyunwoke.com/support. You can support my work on Patreon anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to $250, I think is the highest level I have right now. Some levels give you some perks, some levels don't. But actually, all of the levels on Patreon give you the same perks as my locals community, to include our 2 community Zoom calls that we do every single week, access to the supporter Discord, stuff like that. So you can give through Patreon if you want. If you don't feel comfortable with Patreon, that's totally cool. You can make a gift through locals. You can do $5 a month. You can do $50 a year. You can do one-time gift. All of that will open up some perks for you, and other ways you can support my channel. Of course, super chats are always welcome, but you can also become a paid subscriber on my Substacks, where I'm publishing a lot of content. That all helps me out, and it helps me be able to continue the work I'm doing. And I'm happy to offer you guys some really cool perks, like this Sunday. We are doing movie night in my supporter Discord. We had a great movie night last week. We watched Soylent Green. On Sunday of this week, we are going to be watching 1984. I don't think that movie night's going to be like a full-on like weekly occurrence. This is just how we did it this time. But it is going to be a regular event. I have some wonderful members of my community that have stepped up, offered their movie collections, shown us how to do this on Discord so we can have a nice little time together. We had a great discussion last week about Soylent Green. I really appreciated people's observations, and I'm really looking forward to watching 1984 with a group of people. I've never watched it with a group of people before, but I think it's a great movie. If you've never seen it, you need to see it. Of course, it's not as good as the book. Movies are never as good as the book, but it is a really well done movie, and we are going to be watching that on Sunday on the Discord at 8 p.m. And you can get access to the Discord either by donating to the Indiegogo campaign or by supporting my work in other ways. And I will get in touch with everyone and make sure that everyone has access to the Discord, and so we can all have that movie night on Sunday. Oh, Jan hasn't seen it. Jan, you gotta watch it. You gotta come to movie night then. George, you gotta come to movie night too. Jeez, you guys, come on. Come on. It is really a good movie though. It really, really is. And I'm looking forward to it. One more thing I want to let you know about is I am going to be doing a back to school book club for my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. It starts on September 17th, so you got a couple weeks to get your copy of the book. It is totally free to join. You don't have to be a supporter. You don't have to be in my locals or anything. You do have to have a copy of the book just to keep out the riffraff. I asked for a receipt for proof of purchase, just so I know you actually did buy the book, whether it's hardcover, Kindle, audio version, whatever's clever, whatever works for you. And if you want to sign up for this, you can head over to activelyunwoke.com/book club and get signed up. We are starting our book club on the 17th, so plenty of time to read the first section. The book club is in 3 parts because there are 3 parts to the book. So you only need to read the first section by September 17th. I promise you, you got plenty of time to do it. Deborah, you've never seen 1984 either. You got to come to movie night then. Jeez, I cannot believe how many people haven't seen that movie. That's really great. We're going to have a great movie night. All right, guys, before we dig into the movie today, I, of course, have my tradition where I need to get my beer. And so I do have 3 beers today. Let me show you. And I'm going to be picking out the beer today. No offense to everyone, but they're all pumpkin. They're all pumpkin. I have an Elysium Dark of the Moon pumpkin stout. I have another Elysium Night Owl pumpkin ale. And this is my favorite fall beer. This is my favorite fall beer. It is amazing. If you like pumpkin, you're going to love this beer. I promise you. Pumpkin is back. Southern Tier Pumpkin Imperial Pumpkin Ale. This is what is 8.6%, and it tastes just like pumpkin pie. I swear to God, this beer tastes like pumpkin pie. I just bought this the other day. I have not yet had a pumpkin this year. It's like, oh, these beers are so good. I'm not going to start this one because this is the big beer. This is the thing that gets you drunk. This is the thing that gets you on the floor. This is the thing that gets my husband in trouble after he's already had a whole bunch of beer and he's like, what's one more? Except he doesn't realize that this is an almost 9% beer and he's been drinking like 4.5% beer all evening. And it just doesn't work out well for him. But we are more responsible with our beer drinking than sometimes my husband can be. Of course, my husband's responsible. It's not like he does anything bad or anything. But we're gonna be more responsible. We're gonna go in with the eyes wide open. But I do actually want to start today because I'm doing a little progression with the beer. I do want to start with the Night Owl, the Elysian Night Owl, because this is just like their classic kind of pumpkin ale, and I haven't had it, and I want to try it. And we're going to go to the stout, and then if we get through that, then we crack open the pumpkin, man. You end with the pumpkin. You don't start with the pumpkin, you end with the pumpkin. Trust me. It's just better that way. All right, let's crack this open. And I gotta tell you, like I got this Elysian beer in a variety pack, like a pumpkin variety pack. One of the beers they had was called Punkachino. It is a coffee pumpkin beer, a coffee stout pumpkin beer. It was so fucking good. Oh my God. That was really good. It tastes like coffee ice cream. Look at that. Perfect. Perfect. Cheers, everyone. If you have a beverage of choice, please chat it in. Let us know what you're drinking. Cheers, guys. We made it through another week. Happy Friday. The end of summer is here. Today was the first day in New Hampshire that it felt like fall, and it felt so nice. It was like the first day I'd woken up in months, and I was like, oh my God, it's nice and cool out. I'm going to maybe start wearing my shawls. It's shawl weather time, and I'm so excited. I love fall. It's my favorite season. All right, guys. Let's get this party started, and I'm going to just get my thing set up here. And again, remember, this is happy hour. We are watching a woke training or a woke presentation from start to finish. And we're going to let them say what they want to say. And I think Haymarket Books, man. Haymarket Books, thank you for this illustrious socialist YouTube channel that we are going to have so many hours of fun and entertainment. Oh, hey, Blake breaking the flaw. A good education video is Jeremy Kaufman ride along with a cop at Porkfest. Yes, I do recommend that everyone go watch the episode of Cops that Jeremy Kaufman filmed with Robbie the Fire at Porkfest on his channel. That was really great. I appreciate it. All right, guys, let's get this show on the road. It's always eerie when they don't start right away. Like, what's going on? What's going on? Does the sound work? Oh, there. Oh.
Everyone, thanks for joining us.
That was
I'm
an
Marisol
interesting
Lebron. I'm an
introduction.
associate professor of feminist studies and critical race and ethnic studies at the University of California.
Oh, wait,
Santa Cruz.
critical race
and my
studies
environmentally
professor.
friendly lights just turned off. I want to thank you all for joining us for today's event, Learning as Rebellion, Resisting Right-Wing Attacks on Higher Ed, sponsored by Haymarket Books and NACLA. Basically, I'm going to give us a kind of framing for the event today, and then I'll introduce the speakers and we'll launch into the questions. Remember that there will be a Q&A at the end, so feel free to get those questions ready and put them in the chat function in YouTube. Across the Americas, conservative politicians have set their sights on schools as key ideological battlegrounds. And when vulnerable students and scholars are targeted for their identities and/or politics.
This is like the third presentation we've seen in the last couple of weeks where they have started calling students scholars. And I think, again, like for those who haven't seen this, we've seen this show up several times now where like these critical race theorists are calling students scholars. And it's like, I think they're doing it because they want us to think of kids as little, like little adults. I don't think they want us to think of them as kids. I think they want to frame them as like adults that happen to be in child-sized bodies. And that's why they're calling them scholars.
Universities often fail.
And by the way, this is a relatively new presentation. So this video, I just want to give you guys a date on this because sometimes we watch older stuff. This presentation that we're watching is 1 month old. 1 month old. So this is very, very new.
To protect them for fear of alienating donors or powerful political allies. What can we do to fight back and protect one another? Today's event is inspired by Logia Garcia Peña's amazing book, Community as Rebellion, a syllabus for surviving academia as a woman of color. You can get this right now on Haymarket, I believe, for a 40% discount. So check it out if you haven't already. It's an incredibly powerful book. So today's conversation is going to explore the recent wave of attacks on higher ed and discuss what it would look like to create liberatory spaces of learning and education. So
you guys were right. It was probably responsible for us to watch this.
Peña is here with us
probably
today.
The responsible choice.
Luciana
I wanted to watch
Brito
Russian Revolution.
will also be joining us, and Gio Mar. So I'm really excited to be in conversation with you all. So
no, not
I
NAMBLA.
just want to say a couple quick words about this
not NAMBLA,
book
NACLA.
Before having the opportunity to turn it over to Logia to tell us a little bit about the impetus behind writing it and what you hope to achieve with the book, right? What do you want people to take away from the book? But reading this book was an incredibly powerful experience for me. And I felt really honored to be let into this book, right? And in the book,
hang on.
What Logia does is really give us.
Did anyone feel honored to read my book? It's okay if you did not feel honored to read my book. It is not an honor to read my book. You are honoring me by buying my book and spending your resources on my book. I just think it's such an odd thing to say. Like I felt so honored to have the privilege to read this book. Like, it's a book. It's not hard. There's no barrier to entry, dude. Yeah. Emily, I do want to watch that Russian Revolution one. I'm not joking about that. I really do. But we can watch this one too.
Us a window into an honest treatment of the challenges faced by radical scholars, by
you guys were honored to
minoritized
read my book.
scholars
Thank
in higher
you.
education
I
and the
appreciate it.
challenges that are faced by vulnerable scholars in higher education. One of the things that, and we'll get into this during the Q&A, but one of the things I really respected and appreciated
I
about
want a
this
fancy
book
thing like
was
this.
the dedication to providing an unflinching look at what's really going on in higher ed and really resisting a
What's really going
romantic
on in higher ed?
narrative about higher education, at the same time fighting.
As a reminder, something like 95% of people who are employed in higher education make donations to the Democratic Party. It's an extreme, like, there is no right-wing espionage in higher education. It does, like, with the exception of, like, very few colleges, the vast majority of people, and by the way, for people who don't know, I worked in higher education for 10 years. I worked at several different colleges. I worked at consultants that serve colleges. Up until relatively recently, I was still doing consulting with colleges, like with their leadership, basically up until the pandemic. And then I decided that higher ed was just too crazy for me and I didn't want to do it. Fun fact, consulting with leadership teams in higher education is probably one of the things that was one of the most lucrative things I did, but also was one of the biggest time wasters that I ever did, because even though I got paid very nicely to do that type of consulting, they never did anything. They never did anything. It was always infuriating to me. It was all just for show. Anyway, 90% plus of people who work in higher education make gifts to Democrats.
For these spaces of connection and camaraderie and these possibilities for rebellion that exist in these spaces in spite of the violence that academia and the university perpetuates in people's lives. So I'm deeply, deeply grateful to you, Loria, for writing this book, for letting us into these really intimate stories that you provide of your experience as a woman of color, as a Black Latina, navigating higher ed. So I'm really grateful to you for sharing these stories and writing this book. But I wanted to turn it over to you to just give us a little context on why you wrote the book and what do you want people to get from it.
I can get my button to unmute. Thank you so much, Marisol, for this lovely intro. And good afternoon, everyone from Boston. I'm so honored to be here. I want to thank again Marisol Lebron and Heather Giles for the initiative, and of course, Haymarket and NACLA for supporting my work. NACLA has been a sort of home for me as a writer and as a public scholar for almost a decade now, and it feels really incredibly fitting to have this moment today to be in conversation with Latin American scholars and NACLA contributors. So again, thank you, Luciana and Gio, for joining us and for your generosity in reading this little book. I share this in the book, but and I have talked about it often, but I really began to write Community as Rebellion, not as a book, but as a letter to my graduate students, who are all women of color and queer people. And
all of her graduate students are women of color and queer people. Okay.
With me as I embarked on this profession. In part because I believe many of us are socialized in grad school to believe academia is a benevolent profession and that we must give our whole being to it, even at the expense of our mental and physical health. And in part because I do believe that what we do within and outside the university as scholars and as writers and as teachers has incredible potential to enact positive changes in the world. So I began to write almost as a rant. I had attended a conference in 2000, at the end of 2018. And in that conference, I felt ostracized, silenced. I along
really
other young scholars,
really,
as we were trying to change some of the structural ways in which conferences work, right? Where there is a very strict format, where disciplines are privileged, and where interdisciplinary and non-traditional work is kind of pushed to the sides. And so a group of women, Sharina Mayo Pozo, Beth Manley, and I sat down after the conference and we're like, we're going to try and do something else. And we put together a symposium on Dominican studies that was radically different that center the work of young scholars, particularly grad students and young professors. And we noticed the difference. We noticed the difference not only in the quality of the work that was being produced, but in the level of joy and happiness. And what was different was simply how we did it, the way in which we center the whole lives of people, and the way in which community was really at the center of how we did and how we share.
They always do sound bored, Jan. Really, you're right about that.
I'm a hopeful person in
it's
general,
so inspiring.
And so it kind of fed,
I'm a hopeful person.
For the
words that come out of their mouth don't match their enunciation.
That collaborative, community-centered environments can have, in terms of the impact they can have on people and on ideas. And so the impetus for the book was to share not only what the challenges are currently in academia and in the university as a site of everything we know, right? Neoliberal, racist, you name it, but also the kind of...
Did she just say that universities are neoliberal and racist?
Possibilities that there are if we actually do the work of centering people, of centering collaborations, of thinking of ourselves as part of
we'll see you later,
rather than as isolating creators of knowledge. And so the idea of community rebellion is simply an invitation to rethink how we can create together, how we can make knowledge, how we can change systems, and how we can fight back against the kind of structures that the university continues to impose, particularly on those of us who are minoritized and racialized.
What are those structures?
Women of color, and the impact that has on our lives every day. So that was the thought behind writing this.
She's given us no information about what any of these things are.
So I want to turn it over to Luciana and then Gio, but I thought we could start off the conversation just talking about what do you all see as the most pressing issues confronting scholars right now? How do we make sense of these? What are these right-wing attacks? What are you seeing? And how do we make sense of what's going on? So Luciana, if we could start with you and then Gio.
Okay, thank you, Marisol. Thank you, you guys, for inviting me for, participate in this conversation. It's such a really important moment to discuss how extreme right, attacks has been affecting academia. Of course, I will talk about my experience in Brazil. The system is a little bit different of the United States. So most of our universities are public universities, are federal universities. So these universities depend on federal money. Since the beginning of the 2000s, we start to apply racial quota systems in Brazilian universities for students. So in all public universities, the quota systems for Black students and indigenous students has 10 years. And the sensation that I have now is that right on our time, our moment, things are falling apart in Brazil. So in terms of professors, before the quota system, we had less Black students in Brazilian universities than South Africa during the apartheid regime. And in terms of professors, now we had less than 3% of Black professors. Now we have 20 I got the number. We have a 23.6 Black professors.
So that seems like improvement.
Percent of Black professors in the whole Brazilian public university. So we are a few people. And the idea the Loja brings in the book about build alliances, sincere and affectional alliances is really important, since talk about the issues that we are talking about today is really complex. The money for research is even smaller, so the ones who suffer more for don't receiving financing support for research are the Black professors, especially Black women.
Is that not what they want?
I think the last year, this federal government cut 70%. In 70%.
You didn't miss much yet, Spirit Matter, but you did remind me to do the captions, so I apologize for that.
So if you are a Black person, especially a Black woman in a department, and the university has a small amount of money to share.
I like her ring. I'll say that. I like her ring
professors, a lot. Black women are the researchers who will not receive financial support. And we are the ones who are dealing with this students who permanency in universities are threatened by poverty, especially after the pandemic. So we are the professors who are advising these students who have less fellowships and who have less recognition from our peers because of the type of research and courses that we are offering. Things related to LGBT community or decolonial thoughts or decolonize the curriculum. So we feel that that's why I describe it.
I agree, Deborah. I agree.
The moment that we finally
poor us. We don't have enough. We need more money.
With the implementation of the programs for Black students and Black professors.
They're not sponsored. Hang on. They're not sponsored by NAMBLA. That is not correct. They're sponsored by NACLA. They're not sponsored by NAMBLA. It's NACLA. 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 I don't mind pointing out when there's messed up stuff going on, but we also need to be accurate. NACLA is not the same as NAMBLA. Those are two different things. Yeah, I'm having a hard time understanding her too, but we have the captions now, so maybe it'll be a little bit easier. This is what happens, by the way. This is very common when we watch like legitimately socialist presentations, is there is inevitably like some really strong accent involved because they have to go outside to get the socialists. I know it sounded, but it wasn't NAMBLA. I just don't want to start any rumors. It was NACLA.
Right. Rise in Brazil.
I just want to start rumors.
Especially because of this entrance of Black people in universities, both as professors and as students. Because like in the United States, and
a little too much cardamom in this pumpkin, I think.
Is this white tower.
She means ivory tower, not white tower. She means ivory tower.
Accessed by a small elite of each country, like some ministers of education are saying in Brazil that the universities are space for the Brazilian elite. It's not for the sons of the doormen, like a minister of education said last year. So this is where my first thoughts after reading the book, and I feel really comfortable to associate this reality that I have been thinking about in Brazil with this reality that you guys are describing, that you are describing, Loja, in the United States, especially as a Black academic, and more importantly, the amount of work that we do. And this feeling of caring.
We do work more than everyone else. In the university, we care more than everyone else. No, that's not true. Come on.
Was really important to me. read your thoughts and don't have this feeling of being
White
thinking
Tower
about this by
versus
myself,
Ivory Tower.
this stage of loneliness. So
Well
thank
done,
you.
Spirit Matter. I have no idea what she just said, just for the record. I truly have no idea what was just said, other than, poor me, I don't have enough money,
Yes,
I
thanks
care
again
more
to
than anyone
everyone
else.
for setting this up, to Marisol, to Nakla, and of course to Haymarket for hosting. Thank you so much to Loria for this book. It is really just a masterful and powerful indictment of the university. And also, and I think it's touched on something Marisol already said, also a call to engage in that struggle for that space, right? I mean, in neither of these pieces, I think, ever falls away, right? The critique of the space, the coloniality of university power, the logics that permeate it and that it reproduces, and also the idea that, of course, that doesn't mean abandoning this struggle, abandoning this space. And this, which I'll circle, I think, back around to, is exactly why the right is targeting it, right? Because it's a crucial space that needs to be contested, that needs to be fought for. And so...
Since when is the right targeting the university? Like, I really wonder, like, how do these people convince themselves of this? The right is not doing anything. The right last night was called out as being un-American traitors by Joe Biden, and the very best that they could muster was a strongly worded statement and some memes. You think that, like, these people truly think that the right wing is mounting an attack against the universities? The right has totally given up on the universities. They don't even buy into the universities. They don't like the universities. They aren't going to send their kids to the universities if they can possibly help it. They think it's a giant waste of money. They aren't mounting any attack on the universities. This is one of those instances where, like, they have completely fabricated an alternate reality in their head that has absolutely no basis in what's actually going on.
I should say at the beginning that one of the things I love so much about the book is the way that it keeps both the potentialities and the modalities of community resistance just front and center, right? Which is, I think, a very difficult task amid all of the the diagnosis.
I like
of
his bookshelf,
these
though. I have to say that.
dynamics.
I do like the bookshelf.
It's something that, of course, was not
I want a bookshelf like that.
That was, written particularly for me as a person, let's put it that way, but which resonated in many ways with my personal experience, but also with things that I've seen, witnessed, dynamics, logics, and in particular the way that the logics of austerity and white supremacy have worked together in recent years to produce false scarcity, competitiveness, individualism, and it's a really great account of those things. And I'll just say a couple words.
God damn those individualists!
I think
they ruin everything.
The way that I see, what we could roughly call neoliberalism and the neoliberalization of the university as an economic process, but the goal.
See, their real target in this isn't actually conservatives. I'm pretty sure that these people think, because again, remember guys, for those who came late, we are watching legitimate socialists today. These are not play pretend socialists. These are like legitimate socialists. And when they say right wing, I'm fairly certain what they mean is neoliberal. Okay? So if you have like conservatives over here, you might have neoliberals over here, and then you have socialists over here. They're not targeting conservatives. They damn well know that conservatives aren't doing anything. They're actually targeting who they consider to be neoliberals. And that's who I'm pretty sure they're considering right wing. Yeah, Incognito, you're right about this. They know that the true right is not doing anything. That's why they've said neoliberal several times in this presentation already. I do like that bookshelf. I do. It's not even like a very hard bookshelf. It's just like some pipes and some boards. And he's got it all perfectly stacked. Like, this is a very intentional bookshelf.
Of which is always a political one. And I want to foreground that this economic process is a political process in multiple ways.
They might. Let's wait.
Again, these are things that are laid out very, eloquently and beautifully in the book. But for example, first of all, the ways in which by neoliberalization, we mean the restructuring of the university, the cutting of public budgets to public universities, the cutting of all funding to all universities, and the way that this creates an opening for, first of all, private money. What does private money mean in a university context? It means two things very
money.
importantly.
Oh no, not that.
One of which is precisely the powerful veto that private funders, begin to have and have begun to have over, even public university officials, even private university, professors, and over, the what we refer to often as academic freedom. The fact that at a certain point, if private donors are withdrawing millions of dollars, your, academic freedom is worth far less to the university than that money. But this private money, this injection of private money that goes along with budget cuts also means something very crucial, which is the propping up of right-wing thought within the universities, right? Dark money funded think tanks, institutes, that fund things like Charles Murray's speaking tours, that give it the sort of veil of academic rigor and science, and that allow and encourage and in fact provoke debates around academic freedom, when what we're talking about is, again, right-wing dark money being sort of plowed into universities. A second piece I think that's crucial is adjunctification, right? The decline in tenure and tenure track faculty, the rise in adjunct faculty. But crucial to this, I think, is the fact that this is not just about money in economics, it's about power, right? Because adjunct faculty and precarious faculty are faculty that are easily removed, easily dismissed.
That's true.
There are so many cases of people who have been attacked, like some of us have.
I will say I've done some adjuncting and it sucks. It sucks. It sucks real bad. And it's just like they treat you horribly. You don't get paid anything. It takes a metric F ton of time. They can fire you at any moment. You can't plan on it. Like it's nice as like I really feel bad actually for people who make adjuncting their full-time job, because it's nice for a little extra money on the side. It's nice if you're adjuncting like 1 or 2 classes like a semester or whatever. But if you are a full-time adjunct, you have to teach so many classes just to make like minimum wage, and it sucks. And I've never done it full time. I've only done it like extra money on the side, and it just sucks. And I don't think I would ever do it again. Although I have kind of thought about like if though I don't have enough things on my plate, I have in the back of my head thought every once in a while, I'm like, maybe I should just try adjuncting again, just to see what happens, just to see what's going on, and to like get inside the system. I'm not going to do it right now because I've got way too much stuff going on, but I have actually thought about like maybe I could sneak in there like a spy. I don't know, maybe someday.
But who, as by virtue of being adjuncts or temporary faculty, the scandal doesn't last, the outrage doesn't last. They're not actually fired, they're simply not renewed, and they disappear, from the university as a result. And there are many, many cases like that. Adjunctification is just as much about power as it is about saving money. It's about creating a.
Here's the thing though, Chris. Here's the thing though. Or not Chris, sorry. I'm looking at a different name in the chat. Boom her. Sorry. Here's the kicker. Adjuncting would not be a thing if people were not stupid enough to do it. Here's the thing. It's like people want these, like adjuncting is a way that you can get your foot in the door in order to become full-time faculty. And just, it's like with anything else, it's like getting the foot in the door. And there are a lot of people out there that they rely on adjuncting to make their money. And those people are not necessarily always academics, by the way. They're not necessarily bad people. Like, again, like I was adjuncting like 10 years ago or something like that. And it was just like, I was a working professional that was like teaching on the side. And so I actually do trust people who are adjuncting more than I trust assholes like this. I'll tell you that every day of the week. So I don't think it's stupidity. I mean, if I have to choose between someone who's a professional and someone who's a professor, like a full-time academic teaching, I'll take the professional every day of the week. At least they're going to give like practical advice, and they're probably adjuncts too are probably not going to be as indoctrinated into the system, because again, a lot of them have full-time jobs. So I don't think it's necessarily like a stupid thing. I do think that universities though do take advantage of them very severely. So I think that that's actually a really good point.
Docile class of academic workers. thirdly, and I think this is a crucial one that Lorgia shows, and demonstrates very well in the book, is this question of false scarcity, right? Which creates situations in which you're cutting all of the tenured faculty lines, the stable faculty lines. And so at the same moment that you're trying to sort of radically transform and diversify and decolonize the university, you're trying to do so in a situation that's inherently competitive, right? In which, dozens, if not hundreds of people who all do great work, who all think of themselves as part of a collective endeavor, are nevertheless
Crispy is asking, is it done as a resume feature? I think for some people it is. It definitely does help on your resume. Like when I had adjuncting on my resume, it was definitely like really when I actually still had to I haven't updated my resume in probably like 10 years. But like, yeah, I mean, it was definitely very helpful to have adjuncting on my resume. But I also think that I do think that people do it because they like teaching. A lot of them do it because they like teaching. Teaching can be really fun, guys. It really can be. And I mean, this is part of why I'm doing Schools Exposed. I actually really like teaching. I like having classes. I like having group sessions. I like teaching people how to do things. Teaching is also one of the ways that you can learn quicker than almost anything. So I think there are a lot of people that do adjuncting for different reasons.
Competing against each other. And again, this resonates with my experience where I find myself feeling frustrated at being pushed out of the university and not able to get back in, and feel tempted to feel that toward your own comrades, right, who are still in the university or getting jobs in the university, when the reality is that this is a structural phenomenon that in which neoliberalism creates and recreates its own logics by driving and dividing people against one another in incredibly dangerous ways. If we're talking about neoliberalism, we always have to remember that this is like a radical hyper form of capitalism, and we never want to forget
Capitalism!
that, because we don't want to sort of fight the extreme case while overlooking the underlying structural phenomena. And I say this, and maybe say it in a bit of a belabored way, because again, I think this circles back to the important question of what it is that we want to do with the university, right? We don't want to forget that this is a white supremacist colonial capitalist institution. At the same time, we do want to be able to understand that what's been happening in recent decades has been a dramatic sort of amplification of those dynamics, an overt right-wing attempt to intervene, attack, get rid of left-wing and critical radical scholars, particularly of color,
critical theory,
and, to do so for a reason. Again, I think universities are a soft target for the right because they can provoke these kinds of controversies and push people onto a kind of back foot that prevents them from fighting back. And I think that just say a couple of things, what I think the implications are for what this means. I think we need to have a more nuanced and complicated understanding of what academic freedom means. It's not a concept I think that's actually served us very well recently, when we don't understand it as a very sort of radically material phenomenon, as a phenomenon that's never been absolute.
When did you want us to
used
start?
In very selective ways. And here I think about here in Philadelphia at UPenn, we have the case of Amy Wax, and a white supremacist law professor who is finally, it looks like, being disciplined, but who is herself appealing to and being defended on the grounds of academic freedom. But we need to think, I think, in far stronger terms than that, because here is a professor who is actively every day harming her own students, harming her students of color. She said that her own Black law students are not able to compete with the white students, are not smart enough, are not good enough. And you can't, we can't accept a concept of academic freedom that will simply defend that kind of logic as well. That kind of rhetoric, which resonates, of course, with what
we can't defend a concept of academic. And listen, I don't know who this woman is that he's talking about, and if she really did say that her Black students are not as smart as her white students, that seems a little bit racist to me, and I don't think that that is acceptable at all, because I think that we should treat people as individuals without regard to the color of their skin or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Amy Wax, a law professor at Penn, what did she say? Does anyone know her deal? Deborah, this was at Penn. Of course it was at Penn. But he basically just said, academic freedom for thee, but not for me. Or rather, academic freedom for me, but not for thee. Like, academic freedom can't abide by thoughts like this? What? I don't know who this Amy Wax woman is, though. Here, let me look it up real quick. Let me look it up in a tab that I have on the someone sent me a page on the Teachers Union website for like LGBTQ resources. I was looking for that earlier. Like, holy hell. If you guys haven't been through the NEA website lately, okay. Let's see. Oh, found her. Amy Wax, born in 1953, an American lawyer, neurologist, and academic. She is the Robert Mundheim Professor of Law at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Her work addresses issues in social welfare law and policy, as well as the relationship of the family, the workplace, and labor markets. She has often made remarks about non-white people described as white supremacist and racist. I'm going down to... I'm looking on Wikipedia. Let's see. In August 2017, in the Philadelphia Inquirer titled Paying the Price for the Breakdown of the Country's Bourgeois Culture, she wrote with San Diego law professor Larry Alexander, blah, 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 blah. Everyone wants to go to countries ruled by white Europeans because of their superior mores. In the same interview, Wax emphasized that she did not believe in the superiority of one race over another, but was describing the situation of various countries. In September 2017, she said, take Penn Law School or some other top 10 law school. Here's a very inconvenient fact. I don't think I've ever seen a black student graduate in the top quarter of the class, and rarely in the top half. I can think of one or two students who scored in the top half of my required first year course. Black students have graduated in the top of the class at Penn Law, and the Law Review does not have a diversity mandate. Rather, its editors selected based on a competitive. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like, so I don't know that she was actually making statements about race. Maybe she was making statements about affirmative action. I don't know. I haven't seen anything I think is I think it was unnecessary of her to make those remarks in the limited amount of information I have. But it didn't seem like gratuitously racist to me, to be honest about it. All right, let's keep going.
What the university itself,
Yeah. Okay. So this person is saying, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name because I suck at pronunciation. She says she hadn't had more than a few black students graduate in the top X of her course, and that made her concerned that they were not being adequately prepared. Okay. So this is not, she didn't make a comment about the competency of black students. She was making a comment about the lack of preparedness. I appreciate that. Thank you for that clarification.
Part of that means that we need to think about academic freedom materially, but also collectively, right?
Collectivism.
Whose voices matter, right? When we're talking about speakers, right-wing speakers coming to campus, and you try to defend that on the grounds of freedom, a lot of people respond by saying, no, we as other students that you haven't been listening to. We have students of color, or radical students, or whatever.
He doesn't want right-wing speakers on campus
to intervene in that space, to be taken seriously.
Why can't you just bring in your own speakers?
And I think here we begin to sort of move toward precisely.
Why can't everyone just bring in their own speakers, and you go to what you want to go to, and you don't go to what you don't want to go to?
Sort of material sort of struggle
and
concept.
You leave each other alone.
Given us, which is community as rebellion, right? The way in which these are bound together, the way in which they move, and allow us to think in broader terms about what that community is academically, that insists that we think about what the community is beyond the walls of academia, and the way that the two are necessarily and always in connection, in conjunction with one another, and our struggles can't be limited. And here, just to say, two very, concrete things and cases to keep in mind. One, of course, is
guys, mount that like button if you haven't already.
Right? And the fact that neoliberalism and fascism have always been genetically fused from the very beginning, right? And I think we know that from the origins of the Chilean
neoliberalism and fascism have been genetically fused. But we also know
that, in conjunction with what it is that the entirety of Chilean society today, but in particular students, are demanding about sort of reforming and transforming what education should look like in a non-fascist way, right? So here we see both the diagnosis of this fascism and its embeddedness in education, but also the potentiality of that community and resistance. And secondly, and just finally, like when we're talking about community and resistance, I think we have to also think about the 2020 rebellions, and think about really interesting ways that, for example, this logic of austerity,
the 2020 rebellions,
evaporated suddenly, Suddenly, when we've been told that there's
The
no
rebellion.
hiring lines
I mean,
for
at least
this or
he's
for
being
that,
honest
there
about
have
it,
been
I guess.
dozens, if not 100 hiring lines, cluster hires for Latinx studies, Black studies, decolonial studies, all of these things. And I think we should understand that this is both a containment effort, but also something that, of course, should be pushed, deepened, radicalized. And it's only because this broader community, right, this international, transnational community in the university, beyond the university, entered into motion, struggled, and began to shift that terrain of academic, possibility as well.
Thank you all. So this segues very nicely into my first question for you all, and I'll ask you to bear with me because it is a very, very long question.
It is a 17-part question.
But I want to kind of tackle this this point that I think comes up in the book, but Gio, that you also kind of leave us with in your comments, which is this kind of duality, right, that we confront in the university. So many of us inside and outside of academia have a tendency to view the university nostalgically or through rose-colored glasses, seeing it as somehow outside of these exploitative power relations that structure every other aspect of our lives, right? So I want to bring in the essay, Abolitionist University Studies, an invitation by Abby Boggs, Eli Meyerhoff, Nick Mitchell, and Zach Swartz-Weinstein. And in it, they note that in a US context, the discussion of the university and attempts to fight neoliberalization, as you point out, Gio, are haunted by a nostalgia for a so-called golden era of the university during the post-war moment of state and federal support and expansion of higher education. So they note in the essay, they say, quote, "The story neglects the ways that this expansion was underwritten by militarized funding priorities, nationalist agendas, and an incorporative project of counterinsurgency." And I think this speaks directly to
this is so much salad
kind of boom in the wake.
If you guys think this is all word salad, I want to see a chat filled with salad. I want to see salad in the chat.
This outside of these harmful and coercive apparatuses.
None of this means anything.
Of state power. And Loria, in your book, you make a similar point when you say, quote, "Those of us who are made to unbelong experience the violence of exclusion everywhere. My unbelonging to the university comes
that's
from structures
Orwellian.
of colonialism and racism that continue to shape our institutions to date, the nation, our schools, our justice system. They're ingrained in the fabric of our society, and therefore to change, we need more than inclusion and diversity.
We're definitely going to hear that in 1984 on Sunday.
Quote. So during a moment when education is under attack from the right, and many are working to protect the university by focusing on the good it produces,
got a
how do we
deconstructed salad from Spirit Matter
this trap of nostalgia or of promoting a historical version of the university that occludes or fails to acknowledge how it's embedded within these larger power relations that structure society? So I don't have an order, but I don't know if anybody feels particularly moved to respond, but that I'll leave it there.
No one knew what she was saying.
No one
knew what she was saying.
It's okay. I can start. There's a way in which we, and I said this at the beginning.
I still don't even know what this woman's problem is with
to believe that there is something superior about the work that we do. That somehow the fact that I am a professor is better or more arduous.
Oh, believe me, honey, we don't think your work is superior
of humanity than the work my mother did in a factory.
We don't think your work is superior.
And
we
I
disagree.
think that one of the things that the work that we do needs to clarify is, first, this is work, right? This is labor. And Gio was talking about the ways in which the neoliberalization of the university and the way in which the adjuncting practices have clarified that for us. It's very much about making profit, amassing high endowments, and maximizing money for investors. And so if we need to clarify that this is exactly how the university is functioning, particularly in the United States. And once we clarify that and we sort of enter the conversation with that clear understanding, then we need to ask ourselves the question, then what do we do next? How do we, as people who are very much like Martí would say, living in the belly of the beast, but who do not want to be contributing to this neoliberal practices, and yet we're being paid by the university. We are very much within, right? As scholars, as teachers, as tenured track, or even adjunct faculty. Like, how do we create spaces of freedom within systems that are not free? And that is what I'm asking myself, and what I'm trying to ask with the book. How do we navigate this microcosm of the world, which is the university?
This woman has literally said nothing yet, and she wrote the book on which this session is based.
Create a better environment for our students, that can enact positive changes in the world, recognizing that this is not an ideal space, that this is indeed a violent, colonial, racist, elitist, and all the other fucked up stuff that's going on in the world are reproduced within the university. And some people...
The university is a violent, racist, elitist space. It's oppressive. Dude, come on.
Are affected more than others. So it's about recognizing our own complicity with the systems. What am I doing that is making it worse for adjuncts? What am I doing as a senior white faculty that is making it worse for faculty of color? What am I doing as someone who works in a recognized discipline for people who are interdisciplinary work, who are interdisciplinary scholars who may not have a home, which is the case for most of us who are ethnic studies scholars and never have a department. We're floating, right? So thinking about the multiple ways in which we as faculty contribute, sustain, or just simply are complicit with our silence.
You know
and
what?
Then finding ways to create...
I have deep respect for when they're like, it is us, the faculty, who have screwed up the university. We have ruined the university. We have made the university into an oppressive system. Yes. Not for the reasons you think you have. They don't have it quite worked out yet, but I do like and appreciate, and we have to acknowledge when they say things that are good. I like and appreciate the direction she's going in, with understanding that faculty have ruined the university. She hasn't, we're not in a straight line yet. She's still in a tangle, but at least, we're going in the vicinity of the direction that I want her going in. So we're going to just pause and celebrate that. We don't have a point. We don't know what her point is. She has yet to make a coherent point, even though she literally wrote the book.
Spaces of belonging, spaces that make our students and our junior colleagues and our staff and people who are around us feel safer. And I think that begins with sincerity. For me, that space is the classroom. I cannot control what is going to happen in the dean's office, but I sure as hell can control what happens in my classroom, from the syllabus and how I design it, to how I run it, to how I make my students feel, to the kinds of fights that I take on to make sure that the students in my class have what they need and deserve. And so I think we need to work together across campuses to think about how we make this better for our students, for our colleagues, for ourselves. We have to. It's otherwise this is just doom. There is no other point in working within the systems if we're not going to try to do something different with the resources that we have at hand. And I think those of us who are in elite institutions with high endowment have a bigger responsibility to do more.
Oh, shit!
Joe, be quick.
Breaking news that has nothing to do with this. Breaking news, guys. Biden administration announces a $1.1 billion arms package for Taiwan. So that happened. So we're gonna... God damn it. God damn it. God damn it. Everyone gear up for World War III. Yay. $1.1 billion arms package for Taiwan. Are you effing kidding me? No, no one is surprised. No one is surprised. World War III is here, ladies and gentlemen. Get your beer while you still can. Go fill up your gas tank. I actually filled up my gas tank for $40 earlier, and I was pretty impressed by that. I was like, this is $10 less than normal. Yeah, I'd say we're probably going to war with China. I'm sure that's going to end well for us. They're going to Red Dawn our asses. If anyone has seen so Red Dawn is obviously one of the most classic and amazing movies of all time, but I'm talking about the 1984 Red Dawn, not the remake Red Dawn. The remake Red Dawn wasn't bad though. But fun fact about the remake of Red Dawn is in the original remake of Red Dawn, it was China invading the US. So for those who don't know, in Red Dawn, in the original, Russia invades the US. They paratroop in. They start taking over parts of the country. It's a really good movie. You should watch it. In the remake, China was supposed to invade the US, but China got so pissed that they were the ones invading the US that the entire movie, after it was filmed, had to be edited to take out China and put in North Korea. North Korea wasn't the original enemy in the remake of Red Dawn. It was China. And then they had to edit it out. How crazy is that?
Be quick. I'll just say quickly, I think this question of nostalgia is true. I think it's also, again, important to understand how much has changed,
But our real concern is MAGA
right?
people.
Again, we need to keep
They're
our
the real
bifocals
enemy,
on, in a
aren't
sense, in this, in terms of understanding the deep structural, functions of the university, and this real dramatic onslaught that emerged.
It was North Korea, not Mexico. North
sort of
Korea.
like military funding, through U.S. government funding of the sort of behavioralist turn and the social sciences and the quantification of everything and the sort of, emphasis on statistics and predictability, which has dramatically undermined the humanities and transformed how we think, even in the university. And this more recent process of radically neoliberalizing, dismantling elements of the university. We need to focus on both, in part because that's where the nostalgia comes from, and it's real, right? Like there were things that were very good about particularly public universities. Of course, they're radically exclusionary, and this gets to the whole, problem with sort of boomer logic. But what I want to say about the nostalgia is that we also understand that this is a part of a dynamic, right? And this nostalgia is not just false, right, or wrong, or a misunderstanding of the university. It's also the cause of a whole bunch of political barriers that we confront, namely the way that, and Lord Hill just pointed is the way that particularly tenured faculty understand their role and their function, right?
So Boomer, in the original Red Dawn, I think it was all China, or no, excuse me, North Korea in the second one, in the remake. I don't think they had Spanish accents, but they definitely did have Spanish accents in the original because there were people from Cuba. But don't worry about the remake. The remake's okay. It's not like the worst movie that's ever been made, but yeah, exactly. You only watch the new. Yeah, you're probably conflating the two in your head. Yeah, it was definitely North Korea, but it was originally China.
The fact that they consider themselves to be a sort of special class that is disconnected from the world of politics, disconnected from pressures of the social, and able to operate in this sort of floating space, right? And this becomes very, very real when things happen on campus, right? When there are political struggles against white supremacy, against the legacies of slavery and colonialism, and all of those movements or individuals or individual faculty members are suddenly understood as problems, right? As individual
problems. You think that faculty members are going to get in trouble for fighting white supremacy?
Okay. Right? Because the idea is that this is a safe, sort of like stable space, which it isn't. it's of course completely riven by all of the sort of contradictions of the broader society.
Patrick Swayze,
and so it's, I think it's important to understand that that nostalgia is a part of why it's so hard for us to create solidarity from tenured faculty down to adjunct faculty, down to workers on campus, down to students, and and understand that as a sort of broader whole.
Well, thinking about my reality, which we don't have financial investment from big, corporations. Most of the money from the public university are public money. So I think that even if it's really important and valid when
they're not really making sense. For example, it's like basically word salad. We're going to pick up notes here and there, though, so don't worry.
And it's true. For being a machine to reproduce inequalities in Brazil and produce policies that exclude Black and poor populations. I still think that the university, like the own name says, have to reflect the society that we live in. Making a reference to what I said in the beginning, is impossible, for example, to produce science in a country like Brazil with a Black majority if Black people are not listening in this, when this knowledge and science has been produced.
It's impossible to produce science in a white supremacist society, if that's what she's saying.
This institution is a machine to produce inequality in the Brazilian elites. We have this group of people who wants to enter and change science in the way that we perceive the society. So that's why it's in the same time, that's why I'm understanding how I understand this nostalgia of these people who say, so we had the better scientists, we had a Brazilian elite in the university, or the university is not for the kids of the dorm, it's for a Brazilian elite who historically was, for example, producing eugenics to improve the Brazilian population inside the university. So when the social
did she just say, hang on,
the students,
did she just say they're using eugenics to produce the ideal Brazilian population within the university? That doesn't sound right to me. I know that it's like hard, like that was just what I like. Let me know if you like. I'm pretty sure she just said that they were using eugenics to produce the correct population within the university. Okay, I'll back it up, Spirit Matter. I will. Okay.
These people who say, so we had the better scientists, we had a Brazilian elite in the university, or the university is not for the kids of the dorm, it's for a Brazilian elite who historically was, for example, producing eugenics to improve the Brazilian population inside the university.
She did say that.
So when the social movements, and
I don't believe that's true. I don't think Brazil is using eugenics to produce the proper population in the university.
Stay in this place? Should we trust this place? Should we contest and compete this place with the elite and with the professors? What is the sense of it being questioned in the syllabus because we are the minority in this place? So I tell my students and my colleagues, we should compete in this place because this place is public.
Bye, Deborah. Have a good weekend.
Because they are public investment in this place. And from this place, inside of this place, are produced the science and the public policy and the knowledge that they will impact our lives. And because after having a degree from this place, we can have a better jobs in a really pragmatic.
So I'm gonna learn how to pronounce your name. Arcadio. Let me know if I'm Arcadio. I think she means they were using eugenics to produce an ideal Brazilian population inside the university, as in academics were pushing eugenics. Okay. Thank you for putting it in that context, because that actually makes significantly more sense. that academics would be pushing eugenics in order to create an ideal population, I actually believe that that could be true. Not that it was being applied to the university, but it was being done by the university. Okay, that actually makes significantly more sense to me. Which is awful. I don't condone that.
Pragmatic, way of thinking or about the role of the university. We will have a certificate that we make us and our families have a better jobs, and we can, collectively build a better plan and a better perspective of this society. So this is how I would answer this question.
If I could just add that this nostalgia, both I guess in the global north and the global south, it's grounded on white supremacy. It is at the end of the day nostalgia for the kind of university that we envision to be the
I want to know how she
carrier
defines
of
white supremacy.
knowledge. And that knowledge is nothing like what we produce, right? What those of us in this space produce. And so if we were to think about the kind, Lucia, listening to the kind of intersections or the commonalities that exist between the U.S. university and the Latin American university is, the desire for colonial ways of knowing. In the Dominican
colonial ways of knowing. Okay,
I would not be able to obtain it.
So what she means by colonial ways of knowing is these people think white people have different ways of knowing things, of experiencing knowledge, of experiencing truth. This all has to do with lived experience than non-white people. That's what she means when she says ways of knowing. It is white supremacy to use data and logic and statistics and all of those things, but it is a lived for a non-white person. So basically she's saying that like white people only use quantitative measures and non-white people can use qualitative measures, which is provably not true. My dissertation was qualitative. It was actually the lived experiences of people who've been the target of workplace bullying, or young professionals who've been the target of workplace bullying. But
a job as a professor, not with a PhD, not with all my whatever publications. I would not, because my work is considered troublemaking. I don't cite enough European people. So when Borders was translated into Spanish, I was under attack by white Dominican men who considered my work to be pro-Haitian.
Oh, come on.
And not worthy of their intellectual engagement. And so the way in which we think about those... She's
actually claiming that she didn't cite enough white people in her work and she got attacked for not citing enough white people in her work. That's bullshit. I'm going to tell you that right now. That is absolute and total bullshit. She is making that up. There is no way in this universe that, and again, I say this with 10 years of higher education under my belt, with a PhD done, with a dissertation done, having interacted with countless faculty members across a variety of universities, to include 3 Ivy League universities that I either worked at or did consulting for. That is bullshit. That is bullshit. That is rampant bullshit. Because what she's saying people would have had to do is to go into the citation section of whatever paper she had and look up the people that she cited, and then go and find a picture and ascertain if they were white or had like a European name or like were something else. And that is bullshit. That does not happen. That does not happen ever. She is lying.
Just existing in places like that U.S. university, but in fact, they're not just are challenges here. They are challenges that exist across the globe, even in places where the majority of the population is indeed of color. And that is really troublesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you,
Stephen
Luciana.
is exactly correct. Stephen is correct. In real scholarship, scholars don't keep track of the race or sex of the sources they cite. They just cite them, and that is true. Like why is she keeping track of the race and sex of all of her sources? Why is she even bothering to look that up? It makes absolutely no sense. You're supposed to cite the information in the source. You're not supposed to talk about who they are as a person unless it's relevant to the thing, which it almost never is.
Here, because I think the point that you're making is really clarifying in how we talk about this nostalgia too, because there's a left nostalgia that's a nostalgia for a time where access was increasing.
Well, and ARC is making a great point too. Granted, the whole game where paper reviewers push you to throw in not terribly relevant citations to boost your site count is bogus and needs to change. But I really doubt it had to do with race. Dude, this actually happened to me in my dissertation. It wasn't they had no problem with the amount of sources that I cited, but they told me they sent my dissertation back to me because I wrote it too short. I wrote it too succinctly. And they were like, you've got to add at least 10 more pages of fluff to this dissertation. And they didn't say anything about my analysis. My analysis was solid. My data was solid. All my sources were solid. But they were like, it's just too short. You need to add some fluff. And so I literally had to go back when I did my dissertation and I had to rewrite it so that it was more wordy but said exactly the same thing. So I basically had to take 10 words to say something where I had taken 2 to say them before. But I said exactly the same thing. I just had to make it more wordy. It was so stupid. So dumb.
Where there was more funding, this kind of notion of the university as an engine of social mobility, right? This kind of nostalgia for that. And you know, Luciana, I think what you're pointing us to, and Lorhe also with your comments, is there's also a right-wing nostalgia, right? And that's the moment that we're actually finding ourselves in these kind of right-wing attacks, is this notion of what the university should be and what its goal should be, which is this reproduction of elite values, this reproduction of ideas of whiteness, of knowledge that's grounded in these kind of colonial epistemologies.
She means data.
Right? And
that's what she means, data.
Luciana, I think also
quantitative data
to in the Brazilian example is also nostalgia for the pre-quota university, right? This idea when actually access was incredibly shut off and reflected in apartheid of a majority Black country being shut out, right? So I think that's an important kind of, you know, I think point for us to think about, right? There's a way in which there's a way in which the left and it can fall into a nostalgia that actually includes what's been the structuring. The right is very clear on what the university's always been, right? And that's what their kind of nostalgia is for the pre kind of affirmative action or quota, the pre queer studies, the pre ethnic studies kind of era.
Yes,
right?
exactly. The pre queer studies. Can we please go back to the pre queer studies era? I feel like I went to college in the pre queer studies era. Did anyone else go to college in the pre queer studies era? Man, can we please go back to that reality? All right, guys, I just finished my beer, so I'm going to get a second one. Hang on, sit tight. The second beer... Oh, I lost my bottle opener for a second. The second beer I'm going to drink today is Elysium Jack of the Moon, and this is a pumpkin stout. Dark of the Moon. Dark of the Moon pumpkin stout is spookily smooth and chocolatey with a touch of cinnamon. Cheers, everyone. Wait, David, is this real? They sent my paper back because of who my citations were sleeping with, for real? That's hilarious. All right, let's see. Now Southern Tier also does a pumpkin stout. It's called Warlock, and it's delicious. This looks really creamy, though. Let's see. Oh, this smells so coffee-y and amazing. That's good. That's good. I definitely taste coffee. I'm not sure I taste a lot of pumpkin, but the coffee is really good. Definitely some chocolate too. Sean, thank you for the super chat. When they harp on qualitative methods, it's code for avoiding validity and reliability. Can it be done? Can be done with qualitative method, but takes work and hard work. My dissertation was qualitative. I did a grounded theory dissertation. It was a qualitative dissertation. I'm a big believer in the value of qualitative research. However, it's got to be put in context. Qualitative research and quantitative research have two very, very, very different goals in mind. Qualitative research is like an initial entry point that should lead to quantitative research or mixed methodology research on top of it. So I'm not shit talking qualitative research at all. I think qualitative research is great, but there are very specific types of analysis that you have to do for qualitative research to be done well. It takes a tremendous amount of time to do qualitative. It takes significantly more time to do qualitative analysis than it does to do quantitative analysis, because qualitative analysis, you have to go in and you have to analyze every single word and categorize every single word, and it takes a long time. That's part of why my dissertation took so effing long. It was like qualitative research just takes a lot, and I think it can be done with reliability, and I think it can be done with validity, but you have to be very, very clear about your inclusion exclusion criteria. You have to be very clear about the applicability of your study. You have to be very clear about like the next steps that should come after your research, because you cannot do a qualitative study and say this is broadly generalizable to the entire population. It doesn't work like that. That isn't even the purpose of it in the first place. And so I don't think that this is necessarily like a case of like qualitative is better than quantitative and quantitative is better than qualitative. They're just different. They have different purposes. They have different outcomes, and people need to be honest about what those outcomes are. I've never said that my dissertation is broadly applicable to like all young professionals that are going through like workplace bullying. Like that's the population that I targeted, but I would never say it's broadly applicable. It was meant to provide an entry point, like an initial look at what was going on with that specific phenomenon. But you hope that quantitative research is going to follow it up, which I don't know that it ever did with mine, but you know, whatever. I did my job, finished the PhD, whatevs.
I think this is actually an incredibly clarifying conversation that helps us actually think about what this right-wing attack on a global scale is on education is looking for, right? What they're kind of aiming for. So I wanted to, we've kind of been touching on this around the question of adjunctification and increasing precarity in the university, but I wanted to ask, a large part of the story in the book centers around the ways that the university serves as a site of institutional violence. And Loria, quote, institutional violence manifests, really? And this quote was, when I read it, as I was talking to colleagues about it, it knocked me out. And it's one of those things that but until you see someone actually articulate it, there's something very powerful about it, seeing it in writing. But you say institutional violence manifests in multiple insidious ways: denial of equal treatment, abuses in labor practices, unequal pay, unfair amount of labor, microaggressions, and most of all, cruelty. So tenure, I generally agree with you, Sean. I do. Generally, I agree with you. In the university and in an increasingly precarious labor market plays an enormous role in reproducing this institutional violence that is so intrinsic to the university. In particular, it functions, and Gio, you discussed this in your comment, as a disciplining technology that quiets discussions of institutional violence and threatens the livelihoods of radical and progressive faculty if they speak up in ways that the university deems uncivil or unprofessional. And of course, this trickles down to our students in a myriad of ways. at the same time, we're seeing tenure and secure employment come under attack by the right as they work to chip away at faculty governance and essentially create blacklist on college campuses. So I wanted to hear from you all how we can make sense of this and think about our struggles to create a more open and liberatory educational spaces on the one hand, and how we fight against these attacks on tenure as a way of introducing more precarity and gag rules on campuses at the same time that we acknowledge the incredible violence that's inherent in the tenure system, right? The ways in which it breeds competitiveness and exclusion. So.
Can I say something really quick? I think that first of all, we have to see ourselves as workers, Marisol, because there is still a lot of people in academia who really embrace this idea that we are, I don't know, being an intellectual elite is the same of being a financial elite or elite of everything. I'm saying this because sometimes we can have the feeling that this is obvious, that we are workers.
You're going to say your workers as faculty members? Your workers, your oppressed workers, you're the fucking proletariat?
And the scholars who really come from the elite, but even some people who come from popular classes have the feeling, okay, I reached this place, now I'm part of another position in the society. But I think if we unify our voices with other workers, and the conditions of stable jobs in the world nowadays, if we look what is happening and we see ourselves as workers, I think a lot of the things can change.
They're literally making themselves into the proletariat. You know? They are the elite. They are the bourgeoisie. And they're like, no, we are the oppressed workers.
During the pandemic in Brazil, school professors, teachers went back to classes before the professors of universities. And now I'm doing a criticism to my professional group. And we stay quiet while the high school and the fundamental teachers were back to classes. And we still have colleagues saying, oh, we have no conditions to go back to class because of the pandemic. Although we had the vaccine as educators, so we passed in the front of a lot of people, included the professors, because we had to, we had a larger public and we had the classes. So it was evident to me that a lot of us don't see ourselves as workers, and we see ourselves as this elite. So I think the work conditions and the security of our jobs will be, at least the struggle will be strong, and if we see ourselves as workers, even as educators, as other educational workers, as the same category.
I think that's a great point. And I think it was also very interesting, and this differs, I think, dramatically in different contexts, but the ways in which COVID created moments in which professors did sort of see themselves as workers, finally, right? Because they were like, oh,
finally?
Wait, I can also, like public school teachers, organize so that we don't need to go in person, or organize around safety, organize around keeping, ourselves safe, the students safe.
Wow.
And there was at least the opening for a potential collective level of consciousness. I think
the nerve
I approach this conversation very jaded when it comes to tenured faculty members, and I was someone who came under attack with tenure, and yet tenured faculty could not see their own interests in my case, right? And again, it's not so much about my case, about the fact that if they can't see solidarity with other tenured faculty who are pushed out of academia, how could they see solidarity with adjunct faculty or with students or with workers? And it's just very, very daunting the way that this logic, I think, permeates. And
Those
so
poor
ultimately, I
abused
think when we're
faculty.
struggling for things like keeping tenure, defending tenure, expanding tenure lines, for example, we're going to be in a situation where we're doing that, to save and rescue people who will not show solidarity with other struggles, unfortunately.
Snarky
That's not
remarks
the
are
answer to
welcome,
the
Art.
problem.
That's
And the
part of
answer
what
is, of
makes
course,
happy
to
hour
expand
great. You're
those
welcome to be as
solidarities,
snarky
to build
as you
struggles,
want.
again, with workers on campus, with students on campus,
These people
with
deserve all the
different
snark we
sectors
can
of
give
the
them.
student body, of the faculty, and try to break down those boundaries wherever we can, as a way of breaking down these logics, and as a way of creating the possibility for something different, again, within the university, beyond its walls, relationships with outside, forms of education, popular education projects and other things. So, of course, on the backdrop of fighting an incredibly uphill struggle to reclaim what little of that, not the nostalgia, but what little of the good, that was possible previously, right? And push back on this powerful wave of right-wing transformation.
I think in the same vein that we should work to create solidarity with other workers, whether it is within the university or across as educators, I think we need to do better at creating community and solidarity with our students. There is a way in which the students and faculty, especially faculty on the tenure stream, are separated from students and encouraged to sort of create that distance. And for me, as a first-gen faculty of color who felt like an alien at times with my peers, with my colleagues, I found a home in my students. And so it was, I can't stress that enough. I think a lot of students really don't understand how anything that has to do when you're in tenure track. I spend so much time in the classroom just kind of going through, this is what the difference between a lecturer and a tenure professor is. And no, it's not the same when you're taking a Latinx studies class from an adjunct. This is how that's going to affect you when you're trying to get a letter, and that person will not be there next semester. And it's always like, what do you mean? Because typically those are their favorite professors, right? The people who are in precarious positions.
The adjuncts are their favorite professors. That says a lot.
Students to find better circumstances for learning together. I think that's really also key as we think about the future of the university.
That says a lot right there.
Thank you all. So I just want to send a quick reminder to the audience that if you have questions for any of the panelists, anything you want, burning questions for us to kind of discuss, please drop them in the chat on YouTube, and we will answer them on here. So I want to ask one question, and I'll give Luciana, I'll give you a heads up that I'm going to start with you for this one. But one of the things we've been talking about, and I think just speaking to this kind of current moment that we find ourselves in, is, gender studies and ethnic studies professors make up a very, very small percentage of the university. And that's by design, right? The ways in which these kind of fields of knowledge and these scholars have been forcefully minoritized. But if you kind of watch the media and listen to right-wing talking points, you would think the entire university is made up of these folks, right? They are the overwhelming majority.
They are the overwhelming majority.
Experiencing hostility and targeting from both the public, conservative sectors of the public, as well as legislators, right? Aiming to kind of keep slashing budgets from universities. So I'm thinking about the panic over CRT, critical race theory here in the United States, and queer studies as well. And in Brazil, I'm thinking about the kind of panic over gender ideology that has been raging for the past couple of years. So how do we make sense of this? I'm wondering if you can give, and Luciana also, knowing that many of our audience are here located in the US, if you could talk about what's happening in the case of Brazil, but for all of us, if we can talk about how do we make sense of this and how do we mobilize to protect ourselves and our colleagues, right, who are coming under attack, considering the ways in which these fields and these scholars and the students who study this are so minoritized within the university.
Thank you, Marisol. Well, I know most of the professors in Brazil who have stability, what is the equivalent for the tenure in the United States. Although the majority who have stability are not Black women, are not trans people, are not, in general, people from the LGBT community in Brazil. When we do have stability, we have more freedom to talk and to build our syllabus during our classes. Even if we don't have financial support for our research, we have autonomy to decide how we're gonna teach. Although we have a lot of colleagues around the country in Brazil who have been facing a lot of attacks. This happened a lot during the pandemic, during the online classes. Classes that were talking about feminism are a great target because now in Brazil, the extreme right believes in something called gender ideology, like you said. Like we are creating, even myself, I don't know very well what they mean by gender ideology. Is if we are talking about gender inequality because it don't exist, or we are questioning gender inequality, which is something that should not be questioned, or both. So because of the instability, we have more freedom to talk about these issues. The thing is, the stable jobs are more and more precarious, and the positions are more scarce for stable jobs in Brazil. So in Brazilian universities. So in as much as the stable positions that we call concursos are in a smaller quantity, so people who will be selected will not be, in general, the Black ones, the indigenous ones, the trans ones, will be those people who are just waiting for their position to be, open, the better jobs to be open, and for several reasons. Black women, for
it
example,
does seem
will not be the
like
selected ones.
she has a job,
That's
even
why
though she's saying that she can't get a job. I'm just saying. Naruto says, I saw yesterday that Locals now has all the capabilities of Substack. Have you checked them out yet? I did notice that Locals was doing articles. I'm not sure I would say they have all the capabilities of Substack. They have a blogging thing now. I'm not sure what I think of it. I like what I like about Substack is I like that all the articles are in one place. Whereas Locals, I feel like the content is kind of cordoned off from the community. And I feel like if I had published something on Locals exclusively, like no one would ever see it, essentially. So I do like Substack better for that reason, but I haven't actually played around with the functionality of Locals yet on that one. Thank you, though. Appreciate it. I do not need a refund for my haircut, Brent. All right.
So important in Brazil, like now, the affirmative action positions be open, not only for students, but also for professors.
Brent, what did we do before you,
It's
Brent?
really common in Brazil. You have a whole
Jeez.
department that don't have one single Black professor. So that's why
I gotta get the size of my head shaved.
That is equivalent to the situation in the United States. This is about this stable Black people have access to the stable jobs. So we have more freedom to, advance in our careers and have more freedom to bring this syllabus and programs that we talk about gender, that we talk about all perspectives of teaching and of a society in public universities. I always talking about public universities because the private ones have another all the compromises with all the interests and other groups. So I'm talking about the public universities because it's the public money, and they are the better ones in terms of research and investment. I don't know if I answered your question. I was trying to adapt.
Yeah, I agree with this.
I don't know if
it's easier to get support on Substack than it is on Locals right now. I agree with that, Sen.
No, that was
I like
great.
Substack.
And I think this, brings us back to this question of it also is a job, right? And fighting for greater access within the job for stability and a humane workplace, right? That's I think what you're pointing us to is these kind of factors that are shutting Black and Indigenous and queer faculty out in Brazil, right? And the way it then links to these larger kind of panics, right, over subject matter and gender ideology and race and everything. So no, that was fantastic. Thank you. Gio, Loria, please.
Yeah, I want to hear from Gio.
Feel free to jump in.
I would just say that it's also backed, very much about the understanding or the really the knowledge that the way that we've been doing learning, the way that we've been teaching is wrong, is racist, is anti-Black.
What?
It's not the way we should be doing it, and recognizing that that
you're being racist. Are you violating the Civil Rights Act?
People who are racialized or identified as
should you get federal money then?
And indigenous, but the knowledge that comes from these communities, what I would call critical ethnic studies, has the potential to do something different, and those who are in power don't want that. And so even though we're still
you're the one in power
50+ years later to have ethnic studies programs and departments in, let's say, in the Northeast.
She just said earlier in this presentation, she's like, I can't control what goes on in the meeting, but I can control what goes on in my classroom. This is a woman who literally is a professor at a university in the Boston area. It's probably, where is she a professor? Hang on. If she's a professor at Boston University, I swear to God. Oh, I'm going to be so mad if she's at BU. I graduated from BU, just so you guys know. The home of Kendi. What? Oh, here's what it is. The first article that comes up. Why Loria Garcia Pina was denied tenure at Harvard. She's at Harvard. She's so oppressed that she was denied tenure about Harvard or at Harvard. And now she is at Tufts. Now she's at Tufts. Another very not bougie elitist university in Somerville. Somerville is one of the most woke areas in Boston. We're going to look into the Somerville schools next week on my main channel. Somerville, uber woke. That is where Tufts is, which is right down the street from Harvard. They're actually not that. They're like 3 T stops away. Why I was denied tenure at Harvard. And this is back last year on the night before Thanksgiving 2019. Loria Garcia Pina, a professor of Latinx studies at Harvard, was in her house in Arlington, Massachusetts. And I'll put this in the chat. Oh no, God dang, no, New Yorker, I don't want to sign up. Hang on, I'll put this in the chat so you guys can see too. She was in her house in Arlington, Massachusetts, seasoning in a large turkey. She had 9 students coming over for dinner the next day, and she was in high spirits. When her cell phone rang, the caller ID showed that it was Marino Siskine, the chair of the Department of Romance, Languages, and Literatures. She smiled with anticipation. Garcia Pina had reached the point in a scholar's career when great promise crystallizes into solid achievement. She had become a leading reference in the field of ethnic studies. Her first book, The Borders of Dominicanidad, had been well reviewed and received several book awards. A new book on dysphoric blackness was under contract with the same publisher as her first, which is this one that we're watching right here. Hired in only 2013 as the only Black Latina on the tenure track at Harvard's largest division, the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, Garcia Pina had created a Latinx studies secondary field, an area of focus, and collected numerous awards for her teaching and competitive fellowships. She was a beloved professor. Many of her students referred to her affectionately as La Prof. When her university had tried to another university had tried to poach her earlier that year, her department chair and 2 deans had encouraged her to apply for tenure. The tenure committee had unanimously recommended that she be promoted. A second, higher committee had endorsed the recommendation. So when Siskine notified her that Harvard had denied her tenure, she thought he was playing a prank. But he was holding back tears. For all practical matters, she was being fired. Faculty who have been denied tenure are required to leave Harvard. Why was she denied? Why was she? I'm scrolling through the article right now. It's a long article. Okay, maybe we're not going to get the answer. But that's so she's at Tufts now. She's at Tufts. So oppressed. But this is why. She got denied tenure at Harvard. And then mysteriously, after being denied tenure at Harvard, she wrote a book about how shitty academia is. And while I don't disagree that academia is shitty, I don't disagree with the premise, I somehow have an inkling that the impetus for the book may have been that she, in her capacity as an oppressed worker and an oppressed minority, was denied tenure at Harvard and is now at Tufts. Wow.
So the United States, because we recognize the potential that it has for liberatory learning, we are finding ourselves with roadblocks, not just in terms of like the outside politics, but within the walls of the university. So that we, on the one hand, have this lip service to diversity, inclusion, racial justice, and all of the memos that we all had after George Floyd was murdered, and this massive hiring that we saw across the United States, but that does not translate into actual structural changes at the university that center the lives of indigenous people.
Reagan. She had some feelings about it, and I think it's
in universities that do not have indigenous.
And I think it's actually understandable that she had feelings about it. I actually, like, that kind of sucks, to be honest about it. If you have been recommended for tenure by like 2 different, and again, like, I don't even buy into the whole tenure thing, but like, I can see a reality in which if you're denied tenure by like 2 different, or like you're recommended for tenure and then you get denied it after having, like, I mean, a pretty reasonable performance record, I think we can understand why she was pissed. But let's not pretend that she was oppressed because she was denied tenure at Harvard. She went right down the road to Tufts. She got another teaching gig where she probably has tenure now and is fine. She's not oppressed.
Indigenous studies programs and don't have a single Native American scholar. And they get away with this. They get away with this. And I want to call bullshit.
Yeah,
I actually have a new appreciation
really
for Harvard, if I'm honest about it.
And echo a lot of that, and to say that, I mean, but partly in part because of this sort of defensive rhetoric that emerged around the critical race theory, ethnic studies, narrative, which was, I think, quite rightly, an attempt to fight off the far right by saying, listen, we're not what you're saying that we are. We're not this, we're not that. But part of what was being said is we're not dangerous, right? And I think it's really important to understand that critical race theory and ethnic studies should be dangerous to these institutional structures. That was the point of them, that when Black studies emerges out of insurgency, and the point was not to build a siloed off department with no relation to other departments, right? The point was to help to radically transform the entirety of that structure, right? That's what ethnic studies is, and needs to be critical ethnic studies. And of course, the administrative siloing is a part of that. The false scarcity is a part of that, but also the logics, right, of the ways in which academic respectability creates a situation which many people employed in these interdisciplinary spaces, wish they were in real disciplines, or feel like they're, not partly because they're not treated as the equals of those in real disciplines, but partly through internalized logics, where where interdisciplinary work is also not understood to be serious, right? Where interdisciplinary methods are sort of devalorized, and so we, I think, really need to think about the fact that these do need to be really sort of like, plastic explosives, right, in the foundations of these institutions to help really, help radically transform them. And if they're not, we get, I think, what we're seeing, which is even when the numbers are increased, right, it's done in very limited ways, very contained ways, in an attempt to avoid, if at all possible, any radical transformation of the institutions themselves.
Thank you all. So we have some questions from the audience that I want to make sure we have a chance to get to, but one actually relates to the last point, Gio, that you were making, but I'll throw it out.
As long as you don't use it to buy a computer, Brent.
Respond. So the question says, what do you think about a transdisciplinary approach of producing knowledge between different disciplines in the university as a means to combat neoliberalism in higher ed? And Lorhi, I think this is also something that you touch on in the book. So I'm wondering if you all want to respond to this question.
I would say absolutely.
Sean says, clip it. He just admitted the point is to change the whole institution. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention, Sean. I will go back and check that out. What is that? 106? I will go back and check that out later. I promise. Thank you for the super chat alerting me. Maybe I was too distracted by a depressed person being denied tenure at Harvard. Fun fact, Harvard was my first ever higher education job back in the day.
I don't think it's an easy question, right?
Because I was in Boston.
We don't know what those transdisciplinary methods or approaches or things look like, but part of the problem is that we don't take them seriously to begin with, right?
Is that
we treat them as as non-disciplines. We treat them as, that's good in a liberating kind of way, but treat it as non-serious work, treat it as, all of the things that Lorca documents when it comes to tenure files, right? Or when it comes to the criticisms of the work of scholars of color in particular, right, where it's not serious, it's too poppy, it's too mainstream, and yet in the same breath, administrators want anything that's mainstream, right, and anything that really reaches the public, but they want it filtered through these very, specific and strict, methodological, frameworks. I think method and methodology is a big part of this conversation that maybe people don't, pay a lot of attention to, but the ways in which
John, we must all have tenure at Harvard to be liberated. Liberation is Harvard.
Provides not only a constraint on who is welcome in the academy, but also what kind of work and what kind of effect it can have, right? And the way that methods have been, really winnowed down by behavioralism, by, econometric, statistical analysis. And again, the fact that when we see
they're attacking quantitative methods as white supremacy.
The decline in all of these disciplines, what we're talking about is the decline in non-profitable disciplines, right? Decline in non-operational, non-weaponizable disciplines.
It's an attack on capitalism.
Rise of those that are directly functional to capital and directly functional to sort of U.S. imperial military goals as well.
That guy's a true socialist.
And
that
it goes
guy,
back to this
legit
idea,
socialist.
this nostalgia that we were talking about earlier, and this resistance to making room for new ways of understanding, not really new questions, old questions, right? And what does it mean to ask the same old questions from a different perspective? And what does it mean to center the life of Black women when you can, quote unquote, find them in the archives? How are you looking? Because I find them no problem. So it's exactly this resistance to allowing work to follow questions rather than disciplines. And while at the same time, young people are teaching us how to do this every day. And we're just not listening. This is how our students are learning. This is how their lives is being formed, but in interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary ways. But we're resisting and we're forcing them to do something that no longer serves them.
So I have another question here in the chat, which I think is an important reminder for us, right? To think about education that's coming under attack beyond university walls, which is one of the questions is how can we build solidarity with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students, right? So one of the things that we can think about
That's an interesting
this period
question.
of
All right.
neoliberalization is
All right.
the incredible winnowing down of any opportunities for education for incarcerated students, right? Or the incredible difficulty of getting access to materials, right?
So my friend that got dragged through the mud by Mike Harlow on Twitter. So I do actually have some experience with this. My friend that went to prison for a crime he didn't commit, pled guilty to a crime he didn't commit, and then got dragged through the mud by walkaway fame whore Mike Harlow on Twitter for, whatever, because he wanted to destroy me more than he wants to get Democrats to leave the Democratic Party. So my friend is one of the only people that we know of to actually do a JD in prison. He actually has a Juris Doctorate. He did a law degree in prison, and it was really difficult for him to do it. It was really difficult. But he had like time there, so he was like, "What the fuck?" But he actually, so most people when they become lawyers in prison, they don't actually do a full JD. They don't do like a Juris Doctor is what you get when you go to law school. They do like different components of that, so they might do like paralegal work or things like that. But it is actually like on this one, I legitimately want to hear their answer because it was incredibly difficult for my friend to do his JD in prison. Incredibly difficult. His mother actually had to like transcribe all the lectures for him and send him the lectures over like email because they do fun fact, they do have email in prison. And like she actually had to watch all the lectures and transcribe it, and then he had to write something and send it back, and it was just like this big rigmarole. He did get it done, but it took a lot. So I actually agree that this is a legitimate problem. I think that if people in prison want to be able to take classes and things, they should. That to me seems like actually like a really good positive thing is all I'm saying.
And we can think about our colleague Garrett Felber, who came under attack for the work that he was doing in getting access and materials to incarcerated people and bringing them into university spaces. So I'm curious how we can amplify, I guess, this conversation we're having to actually think through these connections, right? How do we show solidarity with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students?
I think one of the things that we can do is to facilitate the access to those students to knowledgement. We have something called extension programs that we could take the university to other spaces like prisons. But I'm a historian, I'm a history professor. I think that another thing that we can do, I will talk about my field, is to build a curriculum that show the history of important leaders and activists whose imprisonment was part of their lives. Is not, the people who are in prison is not criminal. somebody who did bad things for the society, and we reproduce by reproducing or by silence idea. They reinforce the notion the people who are in jail is because they did something wrong and evil to everybody. You know, people who made very important political changes were threatened or, you know, spend a part of their lives in prison or in jail or were attacked by the police or by the judiciary system. I think this is also a really important thing. Lorgia talked about the archives. And when we study history, a lot of experiences, for example, of enslaved people are registered in criminal documents. So how, you know, important part of the society, we know the history because the only record that we have is in the criminal, you know, record, the criminal documents. So I think that this is an important contribution too.
Yes, I mean, very much in conjunction with that. You know, I would say that I think, first of all, we need to understand that the transformation of the university has been anchored to the transformation of mass incarceration, right? And we think about like Ruthie Wilson Gilmore's redrawing of the sort of geography of development to center the prison. This is part of what is revealed, right? Is that these are all,
I don't know.
To sort of
I don't know.
Crises of capital accumulation, right? And this is what's happening when we see the sort of dismantling of the university. This is what's happening geographically, territorially, in terms of property and real estate. It's what's happening with the military-industrial complex, and it's what's happening, of course, with the prison at the center of it. And so I think understanding and relocating prison, and systems of mass incarceration to the center of this story is crucial, right? It's not like we've got the universities over here and we're trying to bring education, to inmates. It's the fact that, that incarceration is part and parcel of what we see in the system of education as well. And more than that, I think it's an incredibly potent space for theorization, thinking, and of course, insurgency and rebellion, right? And the ways in which these are crucial to what we're dealing with today. And there are, I think, lots of things that we could do. One is, of course, to increase access to not just education, right, in a sort of, as a gift, right, to sort of inmates, but for, processes of building relationships and connections between ourselves, between our students, and, incarcerated people. I think that's one of the most transformative things that particularly relatively privileged students can encounter is, the sort of inside out programs, the ways in which, different prison programs are being developed.
Maybe.
Of course, we can fight to restore federal funding to prison education. Not that that's going to be a particularly easy fight. And we can fight to build institutions outside of and in conjunction with the university. There I say this, and there are lots of abolitionist organizations here in Philly and in Pennsylvania where formerly incarcerated people are doing political organization, political education, and mobilizing, all, as part of a broad abolitionist sort of movement as well.
What's going on? Did she freeze? Did Marisol freeze? What's going on? Oh, there she is.
We have a question here.
Never mind.
About the role of university fundraising and donor expectations in enabling or limiting the work that happens in university. So,
okay, I think I'm going to say this before they answer this question. We got about 15 minutes left of this presentation. Thank you guys for hanging in. I know it's Labor Day weekend. I know some of you got plans. I want to say this about university fundraising before these people answer. I worked in university fundraising at Dartmouth. I worked in the development office at Dartmouth when they were running a 1.3 billion with a B, $1 billion campaign. I know how university fundraising works. Faculty have nothing to effing do with it. It is in a completely separate part of the university on which faculty have nothing to do with it. So anything that these people say is going to come from a fundamental place of like, they have had nothing to do with this ever. Maybe every once in a while they might give a speech. That would be, they might give a speech, or they might have a meeting. And we're talking like once in a blue moon, a meeting with a very high level donor that like wants to donate tens of millions of dollars to get their name on a building. But like faculty do not have anything to do with university fundraising. All right, now let's hear what they have to say.
I think this is one of the things that perhaps, Lorgia, you talked about tenure as being something that you constantly have to kind of explain to students, because there's an aspect of it that's very insider baseball, right? Unless you're like in the system, it's actually incredibly difficult to understand.
Tenure has nothing to do with fundraising.
Part of it,
nothing
right,
to do with it.
Precisely obfuscate the process. And there's a way in which the relationship between fundraising and donors and universities also functions in that way. Or I taught at UT, between the legislator and what they want and the university, right? For those of us who are at public universities, also, right, are not kind of immune to this. So I'm wondering if for folks who might be unfamiliar with the context and these relationships, if you all could unpack them a bit, I guess.
If I'm completely honest, I'm still unable to explain how it works. It is so much of a black box at times, and it feels like
it's not really
the way in which gifts and particular accounts are donated.
The fact that faculty are not involved in fundraising is not a reflection of the fact that they couldn't be involved if they wanted to be. Faculty at universities treat staff horribly. The fact that faculty are not involved in fundraising is a reflection of the fact that faculty do not want to be involved in fundraising. So if Loria is not involved in fundraising and she considers it to be a black box, literally all she needs to do is email someone in the development office at Tufts where she works to say, I would like to be involved in fundraising. Can I learn a little bit more about it? And they would be so fucking excited. They were always trying to get faculty involved, but like faculty, again, they treat staff horribly. They look down on staff members. They don't like having meetings with them. They don't like talking with them. It is a goddamn nightmare to work with faculty. I remember one time I was like, I had to present to a group of faculty about like a website redesign, and I basically got attacked by the entire room because they didn't like the font on the fucking website. I was like, that wasn't my, like, what do you want me to do? Like, it was so insane. These people are nuts when they're actually like get together and they like swarm on like admin staff. It's like crazy.
To departments, units, universities, it's so secretive. I just
it's not secretive. Just email them and ask
about a gift that that exists in the department that I work in, and no one seems to be able to answer who the donor is. And all we know
just
is what the
email your development office.
And so
they'll answer your question. I promise.
Gifts set agendas, and
that's not true.
Tell us how we should do the work.
That's not true. That does not happen.
Work that we want to do, the work
literally
we want to do
making this shit up.
It's really concerning.
She's literally saying that donors get to dictate her work when she doesn't even know who the donor is. How is it possible that the donor is dictating her work when she doesn't even know who the donor is because she hasn't bothered to email the fundraising office and ask them? And they would absolutely tell her if she did. These are not state secrets. She is literally making this up right now.
One of the hopes that I have for the future is that we're able to insist on clarity and transparency at all levels.
Just email them and ask,
including the donations and not only how they arrive, but how do we as faculty get to decide?
You don't get to decide. You're begging for money. You don't get to decide.
How certain positions that I had been offered were results of donations, and sometimes those donations were not kosher, right? And were done by people that I wouldn't want to be associated with my name. And so, not knowing,
But you
imagine
took their
finding
money anyway,
yourself,
honey.
In a position in which you are the result of some really horrible fundraising practices that contradict the kind of work that you do. And I think there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes at that level in the university, and we should be, as faculty, especially those of us who are tenure, demanding more transparency. I certainly don't want my name associated with any shady business.
Yeah, and just to maybe just slightly repeat, but make clear something that I said earlier. There are situations, I won't speak specifically, but situations that exist in extreme situations in which private donors threaten to withdraw millions of dollars from universities if they don't get what they want. And what they want could involve disciplining
That doesn't
students,
really happen.
putting the students in line for
No,
rowdy protests.
that he is making that shit up. That does not happen. When a donor gives millions of dollars to a university, I cannot even tell you guys how meticulously this is planned out. They have all sorts of agreements that they have to sign. They have to sign off on how the gift is going to be used. There are all sorts of intermediate. A donor can't just come in and say, you need to punish these students or I'm taking my money back. It does not work that way. He is literally making this up. It does not work that way at all.
Or they can involve firing faculty, getting rid of problem faculty, defunding programs, a whole range of things.
Not how it works.
And this exists, and this is real. And I think not only is it really, of course, frightening, but it also just doesn't fit with this idealized image we have of academia. And I think the first thing is to say this is how academia is increasingly operating, even public universities, right? And again, aside from that, the creation of right-wing spaces within academic departments,
right-wing
within
spaces definitely
think
not being
tanks and
created
things,
within
which buy their own hiring lines. And again, we think of these hiring lines as being academically justified, but in some cases they're not. Right? They're left to the whims of these private donors who have veto power over how these privatized little spaces operate.
He's literally
and I think we should reveal these. I think we should expose them. We should, as Lori was mentioning, find out who's funding them, emphasize which sort of right-wing think tank, dark money, sources are being funneled into what universities.
Drexel.
And do so because, again, what they're doing is they're creating
I almost went to Drexel.
A sort of aura of academicity, right, or respectability for what are overt attempts to infiltrate and subvert, education.
And I just want to shout out really quickly also the work that is primarily student-led of groups like Unwoke My Campus, which looked at like Koch brother dark money that was going into, exactly I think what you're talking about, these kind of like fake think tanks that were popping up all around academic campuses that were essentially aimed at dismantling education, right? And proposing or championing these kind of right-wing causes, right? And so students, I think this is one of the moments where as faculty, we can actually learn a lot from our students.
Check this out. In Gio's Wikipedia entry, shortly after the 2017 Las Vegas shooting, Mahar posted tweets saying the mass shooting in Las Vegas, which left 59 people dead and hundreds injured, was the product of a system that favors white males. His statements such as, "It's the white supremacist patriarchy, stupid," resulted in a number of death threats. Subsequently, he wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post in which he elaborated on his tweets. "I tweeted before then diagnosing a sense of double entitlement as white people and as men that, when frustrated, can occasionally lead to violent consequences." That's our friend Gio.
The work and the bravery that they
proof positive that you can get over tweets that people don't like and still do webinars on the internet. There is hope for me yet.
Show in taking these matters on kind of head first.
Yes, he is.
I also wanted to say, Luciana, I don't know if you want to also pop in, but as someone who currently teaches at a public institution and taught at a public institution, I mean, the kind of effects that the threats coming from state legislators on public institutions is very in line.
She's never taught at a public institution.
Right? And if we think about the infiltration of private,
she's never taught at a public institution. She taught at Harvard, and then she teaches at Tufts. Both Harvard and Tufts are private institutions.
Money into politics, right? Even if you're at a public institution, that is deeply influencing the kind of threats, veiled and not so veiled, towards pulling funding, right? And we saw this in Texas with the anti-CRT bills that targeted law schools, that targeted
no, they didn't. That's a lie. No, they didn't.
Departments,
no,
studies departments, right? And the way
that
in
is
which
completely fabricated. That is not true.
Forced to scramble, right? And departments are forced to scramble to think about, what does that mean for them? How will they make up for shortfalls in funding, right? And this is, again, another disciplining technique, right? So we can think about actually the public and private divisions that we think about in public or in higher education as that thins it out if we think about how much private money is in politics, right? And the way that then influences public education as well. So Luciana, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Just a really quick, the equivalent that I see for this is when, for example, the federal government created something called priority areas to invest money. So the humanities, they has a more progressive and critical point of view about the politics of, especially this government, this extreme right government will be more definanced than other areas who are more compromised with, the thoughts and the way of it, the ideology of this government. Or even some universities who, for example, we have universities that have a partnership with African universities and bring more Black students, or universities that are located in more in areas like the northeast of Brazil, they receive less votes, that this government receives less votes than the south of Brazil. And then this in Brazil, the president appoints who will be the provost of the public universities. So the president is the one who will decide, the person who will control the money, although it's public money. So this is the equivalent, and the humanities suffer more from this distribution of the money. So we have the equivalent for this too. And of course, involve corporations and private money, in, like Lord said, in a way that is not transparent, and we don't know in a way or another, for sure.
Thank you. So on that note, I think we're at time, but
that's a shame.
Say that I think
that is a shame that we are at time.
Checked out the book, please. Grab the book. It's a really phenomenal, really valuable, and really powerful text. And I think one that hopefully folks will find to be a lodestar in how we navigate the current kind of educational system in this moment of attacks on education that we find ourselves in. But I think hopefully the kind of takeaway from the conversation today, although I think we diagnosed a lot of the ills with academia and higher education, is also this question which Lori, you pose in the book, which is how do we care for each other, right? And how do we build these liberatory spaces and find our people?
Apparently,
right?
we do it at Tufts.
I think this book does a really excellent job of
we do it in Somerville instead of in Cambridge.
How to build those spaces and how to find your people in the system, and ultimately how to transform it. So thank you so much to those of you tuning in for joining us. Thank you so much again to Haymarket for hosting, and also to NACLA. for making this event happen. And thank you, Lorgia, for this tremendous book. Thank you, Luciana and Gio for being here and being in conversation. Thanks.
All right, guys, I guess that's all we have on our socialism stream for today. But I do want to remind everyone that, you know, as luck would have it, check this out. Tomorrow, we're going to have more socialism. It's going to be great because we streamed this webinar today from the Haymarket Books YouTube channel. They are a legitimate socialist book publisher. And just for fun, starting tomorrow, they've got a whole series of socialism lectures. Check this out. Check out what we can watch tomorrow. Check it out. I'm gonna make it a little bit big so everyone can see it. But I'm not saying I'm gonna make it for that. I don't know if I'm gonna make that for that first one, but I think I might be live streaming this one. Transgender Marxism at 2 p.m. tomorrow on my main channel. We're doing it live. We're going to stream on my main channel 2 p.m. tomorrow, Transgender Marxism. That's going to be great. We also can watch Black Feminism and Black Liberation. We can watch Change Everything, Racial Capitalism in the case for abolition. We can watch Abolitionist Internationalism. I don't really care to watch that one, to be honest. I don't care to. The Socialist Project. We got all sorts of socialism we can watch this weekend, but I'm eyeing this Transgender Marxism. 2 p.m. tomorrow on my main channel. You're all welcome. You're all welcome. It's going to be great. But in the meantime, guys, I hope that you will consider supporting me in different ways. You can donate to my Indiegogo campaign, which is funding me training 10,000 parents how to find out what schools are teaching via public information on their website. I'm fairly certain that Indiegogo has shadow banned this campaign now. They were featuring it over the weekend, and now it's dropped off their radar a little bit. That's okay. They didn't cancel it. So that's good. We're going to celebrate that. They damn well know about it. I know because I emailed back and forth with their support. So we're not getting canceled. We're good. It has reached its funding goal, but there's still perks you can get, like early access to the online course that I'm going to be launching in January, like scholarship perks. I'll even hand knit you a shawl. More information about that is available at Bing! unwokearmy.com/parents. That will redirect you right to the Indiegogo campaign where you're going to be able to find that. I was working on the Schools Exposed website earlier today. I hope to have a bare bones website up this weekend where we're going to be tracking some of the data that we're finding from different schools around the country, from Burlington, from Portland, from Cambridge. I'll even celebrate the good ones. Rochester, New York, doing equity correctly. Who would have thunk it? So we had a really great stream the other day talking about that. We're going to put that on the website. If you don't want to support that, you can head over to activelyunwoke.com/support. You can donate to my Patreon. You can get this amazing Mad Hatter Giving the Red Pill t-shirt, which was promoted by Matt Walsh this week. Both Ian Miles Chung and Matt Walsh wanted to shit talk my t-shirt. I think my t-shirt's pretty fucking great. You can get that t-shirt when you join my Patreon for $25 a month. It's an extra added perk. You'll get it after 3 months. If you don't want to do that, you can join my locals. For $5 a month, $50 a year, you can make a one-time gift. You can also become a paying member on my Substack. All of those, whether you join in one of these options or you fund the Indiegogo campaign, you're going to get invited to my supporter Discord as an extra added perk. You're also going to get access to my 2 Zoom calls that I do twice a week that are not recorded, that are private, that are amazing. But I would love to invite you all to join me on Sunday on the supporter Discord at 8 p.m. We're going to watch 1984. It's movie night. We're going to have a great discussion, and I'm really looking forward to it. And it seems that a lot of people in the chat haven't seen the movie 1984. Well, guess what? You can watch it on Sunday with an awesome group of people and have a great discussion. All right, guys, that's all I have for happy hour today. I'm going to go hang out with Victor. I only got a beer and a half in, so I didn't hit that pumpkin yet, but I will later because it's Friday night. And apparently, I got to get up early tomorrow for the Westnitz Yarn Along kit launch spectacular. But then we're doing Transgender Marxism at 2 p.m. tomorrow, guys. Be on the lookout. All right. Mount that like button on your way out the door. Subscribe to the channel if you have a couple podcasts coming out this weekend. It's pretty great. I'm going to go get some pizza and hang out and maybe watch a movie about Vikings that has nothing to do with race or anything like that. Well, take care, guys. We'll see you soon. Have a great rest of your night.